The Kengan inspired Roblox game Mighty Omega is a game that's been around for roughly 3 to 4 years through different iterations of the game. Throughout its time, Mighty Omega has had a very active community that has created a long history spanning many events and changes throughout the game's time. Today I'm going to delve into a lot of information surrounding Mighty Omega using an iceberg created by Winter. All credit for this picture goes to him. I'm merely researching the topics and explaining them in great detail. I did a bit of digging and research along with a good friend, Andy, who is much more experienced than I am. He's been playing since launch, so he's helped me a ton. My good friend Hakatsu, who is a wave player, he's been playing since forever. I also reached out to Bush Barbarian to help me out with some of these really hard ones. Thank you for helping me out with that, it's great. Major props to those guys, I couldn't have done this without them. With that being said, I'm not going to delay it any longer. Here's our deep dive into the Mighty Omega Iceberg. So even though Mighty Omega is a game that is very unexplained by its tutorials and usually has the players seeking outside help from videos, guides, or just other players, once someone has settled into Mighty Omega for a few days, they reach the realm of common knowledge. I'll go through everything listed here. Very quickly, the player will learn the controls and the basic properties of gameplay, using the very brief tutorial given when they first load into the game. They'll learn how to fight and run and not much else other than that. Very quickly after that, they'll realize that not everyone is using Brawl like them. They have unique styles and special attacks that are unlocked by training in special dojos. They will likely learn about the inspirations of Mighty Omega and how the game was, as previously mentioned, based off the manga and anime series Kengan Omega and its predecessor Kengan Ashura. They will soon notice the public tournament notification that keeps flashing on their screen, realizing that there's a tournament stadium called Bobsled Stadium somewhere on the map where people can fight locally against other players in organized fights. They will notice that some more experienced players have titles in their names. They will learn the correlation between the Challenger and Kyodai Conqueror titles, as well as their relation to the Trials of 100, as well as the plethora of custom titles created by users. As they look more into Trials, they'll realize they can earn lots of prizes by competing in this alternate game mode, fighting waves of one-on-one fights against NPCs. They may also realize there is a second set of trials known as the Trials of 200, which house aptitudes, powerful passive abilities that the user can manifest to make themselves stronger in unique ways. They'll see players blanket themselves in mystical auras of various colors, realizing that there are transformations players can undergo when they reach appropriate levels of strength with prerequisites that must be fulfilled. They may notice the bookstore NPC Mikhail Apostle. It's either Mikhail or that is just like the worst way to spell Michael I've ever seen, who sells the player books on brief bits of lore as well as previous players who are well known throughout the Kengan scene. In doing so, they learn about Kengan matches as well as CEOs. They may also realize that some skills are a little different than others. Some have special properties that can change depending on how many upgrades the user may have on their skill or how they use their skill. This can be addressed in properties like guard breaking, guard bypassing, stamina drain, iframes, rhythm regen blocking, and many other strange characteristics found throughout skills. They may find information regarding Mighty Omega as a closed community game, which is due to the fact that Mighty Omega was CC for quite a while in January of 2020 before its official launch in late March to early May. The player may also learn about Alan Merks, an NPC who sits in the back of the bookstore wearing a Pusheisty mask. He awards the player with free MC, style resets, and skill resets every update. The player may soon discover the Purgatory Discord server, a place where Purgatory referees organize tournaments for Purgatory points, which is a special currency that can be exchanged for money, MC, or capes. Capes being an exclusive accessory that is very difficult to obtain through most means. The player may also learn about the Inside update. This is an update that was actually devised by the community through a bunch of suggestions that were just passed along. It involves a city that's secondary to Bobsled, which is the usual location where players would reside in Mighty. The secondary city is referred to as the Inside, which is a reference to a location by the same name found in the Kengan series. Little is known about this location, but information has been passed around saying that the user may have separate progression in the Inside and in Bobsled. So for example, they could be TP 300 in Bobsled, but then be TP 50 in the Inside. I am unsure of the validity of this statement, and it is subject to change before official release. It is possible the player can learn about the Fujin tournament and its extremely difficult prerequisite to even be considered for it. Instead of some normal means to enter a tournament through connections, random chance, being one of the first to enter, the Fujin tournament has it's possible participants record themselves running in-game for 2 hours straight, only stopping to catch their breath so that they do not fall unconscious. They must record themselves doing it without any edits and send it to the developers to even have a chance to enter. Winning, of course, gives the victor Fujin, which is a Spec style. Those who look into the streaming scene for Mighty Omega may have realized that one of the developers of the game, Maihei Yolo, or Yolo Yolo, or more commonly known as just YOLO, used to be a streamer for Mighty Omega, though he usually didn't stream Mighty Omega gameplay. He streamed a game called Marbles on Stream, the goal of which is for the viewers to enlist their own marbles to race against other viewers' marbles. Winning such games can give the viewers lots of money, MC, or capes, similarly to Purgatory. Although Marble Games was eventually retired due to YOLO saying he no longer had time to run it, as he was too busy developing the game. So, it has for the time being at least been shut down as per the time of this video's upload. A player can also learn from the bookstore a bit of lore regarding Salt Middle School, which is referring to one of the oldest organizations in the history of Mighty Omega. In the lore, there was a Salt Middle School that housed these players who were delinquents that performed criminal activities. A few of these players went on to be notorious for their skill in combat as they got a head start before most other players. And lastly, this one I'm a little unsure of, but there's a rumor that one of the developers, Takamura, is the son of a cartel member. The validity of this statement is shaky. Other developers have joked about it, but Takamura has declined it. Whether or not it's true, I'm unsure, but it's a topic I felt I shouldn't look into all that much for the sake of Takamura's privacy. There's only so much a player can learn from observing the environment around them and the current goings of the community. There's a lot of other information that can be found in Mighty Omega's past, so let's dive a bit beneath the surface. OMG, it's Holy Church, or I'm calling holy, is a combination of phrases a player may have heard thrown around quite often in earlier instances of Mighty Omega. This is referring to an organization known as the Holy Church of the Father. They were a powerful organization that plagued Mighty Omega for quite a while, but they were eventually shut down due to inactivity and a lack of payouts. Among the specs a player may learn about, there are joke specs. One of these many specs is the World Spec. The spec is exclusive to the owner of the game, John, and it gives the user the ability to throw a barrage of punches, throw knives, and stop time, similar to other Roblox JoJo games. The only difference, of course, being that normal players in Mighty Omega stand little to no chance against a force such as this. Rev Own is a notorious player. He was known for immense strength, exploiting, and boosting to get stronger. He was a person who actively paid other players to use his account to macro form as a means to become very strong very fast. This eventually got him to become TP 500 faster than almost any player. He might be one of the first people to do that. Although he got a bit too cocky when he had actual exploiters fly him away from danger whenever he was in danger of being gripped in wars. This resulted in him being clipped and reported, resulting in a permanent ban from Mighty Omega. After this point, he was never seen again, leaving behind only his name and a plethora of memes used by the Mighty Omega community referring to Rev Own as a feared person throughout the game. Older players may remember the not so old requirement for both float and removal. This requirement is of course referring to ranked elo. The only way to get elo is to enter ranked matches, getting match made into a fight with a random player who is also trying to get elo, and then winning those matches. Getting this elo paired with the other usual requirements such as reaching a TP prerequisite or completing trial of 100 is what was required of players for removal and flow back then. It has since changed as ranked matches are currently disabled, and it is easier to get these modes now that players don't have to grind out fights. Speaking of trial, players may recognize a few names of NPCs found in certain levels, as these NPCs are actually based off of real players. These players are notoriously known for various things which resulted in them being put into this alternative game mode as a sort of acknowledgement. An example of this is Juju Wu, who was known for being one of the first Wu to acquire the clan via the rolling removal 3 times in 1 server challenge issued by the developers. He also traded in 400 total power for a hype boost at one point. Dim Hanma is another legend known throughout Mighty Omega history. He was a staff member for Mighty who would stroll around with large amounts of boosted muscle and fat. He is known as the original Hanma and user of Demon Fist. His very girthy wide appearance made him notorious back when nobody was able to reach that amount of muscle and fat. He's said to do immense amounts of damage, though it is difficult for him to land attacks given his immensely hindered running and striking speeds. Advance, which is a mode known very well as the transformation used by Tokita Oma, the protagonist of the Kengan series, is in Mighty Omega as a spec mode. Little is known about the actual buffs of this mode, or if it even has any yet, but this mode is unobtainable by any means other than being a developer, and to my knowledge there are no players strolling around with this transformation. It is likely to be released later on, and if I am correct, it was mentioned by developers. This would be a transformation obtainable by any clan, not like how removal is clan locked to Kure players. Speaking of specs, I have a few other ones to talk about. Boogie Woogie is a miscellaneous spec ability based on the ability of the same name by the character Aoi Todo from the Jujutsu Kaisen series. It can be used similarly to how it is in the series. Choosing a target, the player can switch places with them on a very short cooldown of 0.75 seconds, and it has a limited range, allowing them to even escape combos, as this ability ignores hit stun entirely. And along with this spec, there's also the Worm Tattoo and the history surrounding that. The Worm Tattoo is a spec that can only be obtained through the organization Worm. The methods of which are either to win a Worm tournament, which gives a tattoo as a prize, or to buy a tattoo off of Blast, the owner of Worm, for millions of dollars. It is said there are different versions of the tattoos, ranging from difficult to see ones with small buffs for a cheap price, versus the largest Worm tattoo money can buy, which is a large back tattoo. It is said to give immense buffs to the user, as well as selling for reportedly $15 million in in-game cash at one point. Final spec I will talk about in this section of the video is the Demon spec. This allowed the user to become a demon similar to that of a demon from the Demon Slayer series. This has very little effect on the user other than they get super regeneration, that makes their health regenerate completely in a matter of seconds, making it incredibly difficult to defeat them by any normal means. The drawback is if they are caught in sunlight, they catch fire and die in mere seconds. Hybrid builds are a phenomenon that was popular in early Mighty Omega, which involved taking a feature from one clan and then switching to another clan to benefit from two at once. Most popularly used was the Raishin Own hybrid build. To do so, one had to become a Mikazuchi, learn Raishin, and then switch to Own to benefit from techniques like Raging Blow and Own Flow. This created extremely powerful players and was eventually nerfed by increasing the stamina drain on techniques not owned by the player's current clan, which resulted in it no longer being viable and being an abandoned meta altogether. Finally, I will address the hate against Jigoku Tenbatsu, one of the major orgs of Mighty Omega. The hate surrounding this org comes from many different sources. In its earliest generation, Jigoku Tenbatsu was completely unopposed in terms of strength. Even today's competitors of Jigoku, such as Worm and Noxus, completely paled in comparison to what Jigoku used to be capable of. This resulted in its members winning tournaments and wars frequently, which caused a lot of envy surrounding other organizations. Besides this, Jigoku frequently wars with other organizations and is usually the opposition to many, which leads to them being associated with the idea of an enemy organization. The final reason likely being that with every organization comes those who tend to prey on weaker players. There have definitely been members of Jigoku who are leagues stronger than weak players who have swept in to just knock them, rob them, and grip them, which definitely would plant the seeds of hatred that would soon be seen across the entire Mighty Omega community. That was a lot of information we just covered, but there's so much more if you look beyond what even a little bit of digging and research can do. So let's dig even deeper beneath the surface. Belly Flop is a rarely seen skill spec that may have been created and intended for use in sumo style, but was eventually scrapped and can rarely be seen used by developers or a few choice players such as Jack Own, someone who has quite a few of these skill specs. At the time of this upload, clan rerolls cost 300 Robux. This is a much cheaper alternative considering there was a time when they used to cost 500 Robux, back before the developers of Mighty Omega had a special event that sold them discounted for 300. This sale was so successful and appreciated by the community, they decided to just keep it as a permanent change to their pricing. There is a skill spec in the game, likely an unfinished skill to be added later on in the future update. It looks like this, and it seems to resemble some sort of triangle choke, a skill similarly seen being used by Jujitsu user Imai Cosmo of the Kengan series. It is very possible a style surrounding this type of combat will come out in the future. Bobsled Arena at this point is well known to the player as a trademark location, but its current appearance is not what it always has been. Before the original release of the game, the older appearance looked very open with a black and gold color scheme, which is significantly different than the caged appearance the current arena has. There was also at one point a large glitch that happened across all Mighty Omega that appeared alongside the launch of Trial of 200 and Aptitudes. This bug would make it so that anyone who had Visionary 1, the aptitude, before the bug occurred would gain a third aptitude, which is unheard of for normal players who can only unlock a maximum of 2. To this day, there are a handful of lucky individuals with 3 aptitudes, boosting their strength beyond the cap of most other players. Mighty Omega has a lot of accessories the player can use to decorate their avatar, but one of the lesser known accessories that were featured in the game were cigarettes, or more specifically, cigars. They were given as a paid access gift for early players, but were eventually removed entirely from the game, likely due to complications with Roblox's terms of service. The Hyperbolic Time Chamber is a location only available to devs and special players as a place to train undisturbed from normal players. It is home to gym equipment, a bed, as well as a training dummy, and also has a John NPC based on the owner of the game. This allows the user to manage their Demon Flip and Demon Fist when speaking to him, and they can also spar him, although you can't learn Demon Fist from this NPC. There are rumors that you get an increased stat gain in this location, ranging from 5 to 10 times the normal stat gain, which is pretty insane. Speaking on this topic, $300 for Hanma is a meme that circulated in early Mighty Omega, as players would offer very large amounts of cash for Spec access to things such as Demon Fist and Hanma. Whether or not this was actually done or not in earlier Mighty Omega is unknown, but present day examples of this sort of developer black market selling and buying has been seen with YOLO, as he has been paid large amounts of money through Steam gift cards to boost height and stats to particular people. He's also scammed several people who attempted to pay him large sums of money for capes, taking their money and then promptly blocking them. With that being said, don't try to black market devs. It usually doesn't work out for the people involved. Moreover, on the topic of Salt Middle School, within the lore that can be found in the books, that were apparently massive and constant wars between the students and the police. This resulted in some of the earliest examples of organization on organization wars in Mighty Omega. There was also a large event that happened, resulting in one of the founding members of Salt Middle School blast Yolotol to leave Salt in order to join the police, which resulted in a large upset that resulted in the eventual defeat of Salt Middle School. This organization then retired, never to resurface, resulting in its members parting ways from each other. Naruto Mighty, or better known for its official name, Legend of Ashura, was a game in development at the same time as Mighty Omega. It featured a very similar playstyle, with the main difference, of course, being that the source material was Naruto instead of Kengan. The game eventually ceased in development as the developers abandoned the project to work on Mighty Omega, which was eventually a very successful game. The unreleased Mikazuchi or Lightning mode that was created in Mighty Omega has the appearance of a Spec mode, although it reportedly is only an animation with no scaling added to it. The only iteration of this that was ever even seen was used by Takamura, and it was rumored to buff speed significantly, but there's no guarantee of this. It is believed it was created with the intention of giving Mikazuchi players a mode. This caused a very large upset in the community of the game, as Mikazuchi was the most powerful clan at the time, which resulted in the devs not releasing the mode at the time of this upload. Besides all of this concrete evidence, as we dig further into the past, we begin to bleed into a gray area where history becomes speculation. So let's discuss these topics. Photos of previous fighters that can be seen in the boxing dojo are rumored to have been taken when there was no face customization in Mighty Omega. This was very quickly confirmed, as throughout the development process of Mighty, facial features were one of the last things they worked on before release. This is also likely why the dummies found in private servers have the same exact face as the people in those photos. Own may receive Ruya. The reason for the speculation comes from many intersecting things. Players for a very long time have suggested that Own should have a style exclusive to them. In addition to this, the Ruya style is a spec that gets passed around a lot more frequently than other style specs. The reason for this may be possible stress testing and balancing the style to see if it's ready for public release. That is a bit of a stretch though. The more realistic idea is that Ruya is merely passed around a lot by street jests between his friends, developers, and tournament winners. And also, on an unrelated note, as I've been pretty unbiased for this entire video, I'm just going to put my opinion in this part of the video. If you are an Own, you have access to Raging Blow, one of the most powerful moves in-game, as a reliable combo starter and extender, as well as a defensive move with iframes and guard breaking potential. You also have access to Own Flow, which is incredibly easy to get and the best mode in game. Giving Own a style is not necessary, as Own is already the best clan in game. Just be happy with what you have right now. Mighty Omega takes place in France in an alternative universe.
What? Bro, what are you...
This is a speculation that has been confirmed false. On one hand, that is some crazy shit to say, but like, I suppose there's at least an origin for this rumor. The NPC found in the police station speaks French at first, which leads players to believe that Mighty Omega may take place in France. And the reason for different architecture and demographics in France is because it's not just France, but France in a completely different universe. This was entirely debunked when YOLO confirmed that Mighty Omega actually takes place in the year 2085 in Little Tokyo, California. If you dig all the way to the bottom of Mighty Omega's history, there's a time when they had to make a leap of faith when developing Mighty Omega. You see, Mighty Omega is a sequel to the game Ken Omega. To begin production of Mighty Omega and Legend of Ashura, the developers of Ken Omega abandoned production of that game to create entirely new systems for these games. This meant resetting the progress of all current players. Somewhere along the way, they abandoned Legend of Ashura and put all their faith into Mighty Omega. Now, if Mighty Omega failed at some point in its production, all of the progress they would have wagered would have been for nothing. Luckily, the game is a success, and players like me are here to appreciate it. Now, let's address some of these conspiracies made by Winner, because these are pretty insane. So, owns are made in laboratories and are not natural. For this, let's go back into the history of Own's production, right? So, Own is a clan created specifically by John with the main purpose of inserting himself into the game as a core mechanic. His in-game name is Joe Own. The reason Own is called Own is because it is the second part of the name John. J. Own. Joe Own, right? Now, whether or not owns are naturally occurring is very hard to say, as owns are not official material from Kengan, you know, like Mikazuchi or Kure are, so it's honestly impossible to say if this is true or not. The closest thing we get to official material for this theory is an excerpt from the Salt Middle yearbook that can be purchased in-game. In the epilogue of Blast Yolotal, it is addressed how he was reconstructed into a new body, and when he did so, he took the name Blast Own. This may be referring to the process of Blast being processed in a lab to become part of the Own clan. Knowing this information, it's not as far-fetched of a theory as one might immediately think. And finally, the Mighty Omega world pulls in all fighters. This, of course, is referring to how there are appearances of characters that normally would not exist in the Kengan universe. Examples of this being the mysterious fighters from the Street Fighter event as well as Zod from the Berserk event. Another strange thing to note is how the Hanma clan, a clan from the Baki universe, managed to become part of the Kengan universe found in Mighty Omega. I feel there's definitely some weight to this theory, as it provides a good explanation for how occurrences like this happen frequently throughout Mighty Omega. With that being said, guys, that is the entire Iceberg. I have nothing else to talk about, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If there's anything on here you might disagree with or have points to bring up, make sure to do so in the comment section below or in my Discord, which I will also leave in the description of this video. A lot of work went into this video, so if you guys enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like or subscribe, or if you don't want to, that's fine too. I hope you enjoyed the video, and have a good one.